Now, don't get me wrong, I'm never going to enjoy flying. I don't think anyone particularly enjoys flying, but through cognitive hypnotherapy, I was able to remove this crippling phobia which presented itself on a few flights I took last year. First of all, welcome, my name's Maya. We usually create vlogs about all the beautiful places that we could travel to, so you can see my dilemma here. If you've ever had a fear or a phobia, you'll know it's not sometimes clear why you're reacting this way, and that in itself can be really unsettling. I read somewhere that if you can find the source of a phobia, that can help you to break it down. And actually this was wrong. I was driving myself crazy thinking, am I claustrophobic? Do I have a fear of heights? Am I scared of turbulence? I mean, who isn't? But actually it was just this overarching sense of I'm not safe here, I'm not safe flying. And this sudden reaction to flying was crippling for the better part of a year. I'd never ever had a fear to this level, and I was suddenly very concerned with upcoming trips, and I was unable to feel excited about going away because I couldn't think about what was beyond the flight. And I think people around me noticed it too. It was almost as if my personality had also changed. I became more wary of things, and in general less like ballsy, I would say, because when I was a teenager, when I was growing up, I was very motivated to do things that would kind of break the rules a bit, or I would jet off somewhere last minute. So this really kind of damaged my pride in a way. So I'd been given a recommendation of a specific therapist who had treated someone else that I knew of for a different kind of fear, and I knew that what I needed was something a bit more complex like hypnotherapy. So in this vlog I'll show you my personal journey across the 5 months, where I would talk about what happens in each session, digesting it for myself and talking about any progress that was made. And there's some very raw and unfiltered footage, so there's going to be some tears. By no means do I claim to have all the answers about treating phobia, but what I would suggest is to speak to a professional, because avoiding the fear or self-medicating is not a long-term solution. What I hope is, after seeing my journey, it can help people in their own way, or just understand more about how this type of therapy works. And then after this journey, I'll join you at the end to explain what happened when I finally did fly. So I just came back from my first hypnotherapy session. I originally thought that we would just talk about fear of flying. I've never ever opened up to a stranger like that, and I've left just feeling so drained. Obviously they want to know like the bigger picture, when it started, the specifics, when you first felt uncomfortable flying, where were you going, what were you doing. When she deals with clients that have like a fear of flying and a phobia, usually it's linked to a trauma that's happened, and then they break down that trauma and trying to make sense of that memory. Because I don't have any bad experiences on flights, what I've created is like these habitual habits where there's anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, my subconscious is telling me you should be scared because it wants to protect me, which is nice, but it's just not helpful. We spoke for 2 hours. In the last 20 minutes we did the actual hypnosis, and I was just a little bit panicky because I was expecting it to be like the scene out of that horror film, Get Out.
Sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
I thought that I wouldn't be able to be conscious, hands relaxed, feet relaxed, get you into that meditative state and just listen to her voice. There was a subconscious element listening. She said, I want to speak to Maya's subconscious. She said, Maya is safe. It feels so weird to
think about if your subconscious is trying to overprotect you, then it's preventing you from doing things. I was already crying in the session a little bit, but this felt like a relief. But yeah, there's just so much to process in that session, and I just wanted to like share it. I don't know whether I'm even going to post this vlog because it's so personal. If I saw this, I'd be like, I need to go to this hypnotist. And yeah, it's costly, but it's going to be more costly when you purchase things to make yourself feel better that don't work. Isn't gonna solve like what's inherently making you feel bad. That was like 2 hours of me crying, and I'm still crying. So yeah, see you in 2 weeks. Maya, hello.
Wave, Maya. Okay, I'm back from my second session. In my first session, it was super emotional because we just went over like everything that was like affecting my life right now and what made me the way that I am. And I've come out of this session and I do feel in general like a lot more energized. She said we should process some grief that I perhaps didn't process when I was 13. She said that these things can come out. It was a really interesting session because I went in thinking like, how can you process grief? Or are you just meant to sit there and cry? She asked me to speak to my younger self, and that was really tough. I would start to cry and then my brain would switch off, and I always just came out of it as if I was like waking up from a dream. And we did this over and over. It feels more like a small weight has been lifted. And obviously this vlog is about overcoming fears and anxieties about flying, but everything seems to be connected. She did this technique which I was interested to see what it could potentially do. She asked me to explain where the hurt was coming from in my body. I feel fear in my stomach. I feel sadness in my chest. She asked me to describe what that might look like, and immediately I was like, it's a red spiky ball. The exercise that she did was she came in front of me and she asked me to watch her fingers moving and coming closer, and this whole time she was really asking me to fixate on this red spiky ball, and it's kind of decreased it. So I think that's one exercise which is to help with bringing you out of that sadness. One other thing she told me to do was like peripheral vision. Really focus on something and then really soften your focus and think about your peripheral and how you view everything else around you. It really makes you think and focus on your vision. Imagine even the space behind you, and that kind of then takes you out further, and that clearly is a relaxation technique because it almost stops you thinking, stopping the world. But yeah, this is just obviously another step. I will speak to you in 2 weeks. Welcome back. This time I was on my way there and I was thinking, what am I going to talk about? And I think in this session we uncovered the fact that ever since I was younger, I've always felt like this extreme pressure that whenever I've had an issue, I need to solve it on my own. And then I think this is what the hypno part comes in, and it's really about going into your subconscious and imagining something visual, which helps you then speak to whatever this subconscious is and try and change it. And immediately I thought of my younger self in a dark space, which was almost like an elevator shaft, which is horrible. Dealing with these problems, everything I need to do on my own, and this sense of feeling completely alone and having to deal with everything on my own. It was just a bit more of a realization as to how my brain really works and how I treat myself. There's a lot to unpick, I think, and to speak for an hour, and I come out and I write on my phone all the notes that I've said, and I'm just trying to retain it, but it's so hard because you speak for so long. But obviously I've come out of this session and I do feel again more energized. I've been feeling down in the last few days. Of course I always cry, but I think that's only natural when someone asks you how did that make you feel, and immediately you're like, ugh. But yeah, I think I'll leave this one here, and hopefully there's a few positive messages that are in that one about just realizing what that subconscious voice is doing, and if it's helpful or not. Even if it is constructive, just recognizing that it's happening for a reason and that everyone's got their own shit to deal with, and I just need to think more on that. Interested to see what happens next time, and I'll see you guys soon. I just had a very, very interesting session. It's the first one that I thought like, wow, that's really affected like the synapses in my brain, and that's like what real hypnotherapy should be like instead of just the therapy side of it. So I'm excited to get back and talk about it properly, but I'm like really trying to retain some of the information that happened in the session because I missed the train and now I have to wait half an hour. More to follow. So I don't know how, but I lost a diary entry and what seemed like a really interesting one, but it's fine because I talk about it again in the next one. But in the session, we practiced a technique of washing a memory. So I'll briefly explain it. So you begin by recalling all the events out loud, explaining how you felt in the moment and what was experienced. And then you imagine you are watching yourself, watching your memory on a TV, like it's an old movie. However, you start it with a good memory when you felt happy, and then you run through this supposedly traumatic part of the memory. And for me, it was a specific flight. But then you finish it with a nice memory again that happened afterwards. Now you rewind the full movie and you watch yourself rewinding it at pace, going backwards like an old VCR. And when it's completely rewound, you run back through the movie but on fast forward. And so you repeat this many, many times, getting faster, almost so fast that you can barely make out what's going on, whilst creating these nice bookend memories that sandwich now that insignificant middle part of the movie. I found this information online to explain what's actually going on. So obviously you can't erase bad memories or forget something with hypnotherapy, but you can change what you associate with that memory. And this legitimately worked for me. Those memories now are very blurry and not so frightening or triggering when I think about those flights now. And I did this technique again in the next session where I explain more. So let's move on. So it's now been my 5th time doing the cognitive therapy. Last time I let you know that we were going through the black and white movie and we're going through the memory of the flight. Today we did exactly the same with another 2 flights. One that was also pretty bad for me was Sardinia, and we talked through that, and then we did the same thing, sandwiching it with 2 moments where I felt like calm, happy, content, and then fast forwarding, rewinding through it in like a state of pure relaxation. And I'm still for like half an hour, 45 minutes, it gets to the point where I feel like I'm floating a little bit, and that is actually part of it. She asks me to really feel like I'm just floating in between, then suddenly this like action, think about it, watch yourself, fast forwarding, rewind through the memory. And again, it worked to a point where it's like you can always get back to those moments where you felt completely content and safe and happy. And now I feel like I've kind of washed all of these like bad memories that when I think of them, I almost like can't really remember them. But I did have a bit of like a wobble earlier this week where I said to Danny that I'm really apprehensive about flying because I don't know how I'm going to react. And I think that's more like the anticipation is like scary, and as the trip to Vietnam is getting closer, it more worries me that it's a really long flight and I'm worried about how I'm going to react. But I'm just really hoping when I get on there that I'm not gonna repeat the way that I have felt in the past, and that I can just relax, because at the moment I'm at a point where I'm not really like looking forward to it. I'm still not there yet. Next week we've discussed how we will go over future thoughts and the thoughts that I'm having right now, where I'm like thinking, oh, this could happen. I'm imagining myself on the flight and being in this state of like fear. And I think we'll tackle why I'm trying to almost confirm that it's not going to go well. We're going to look at like really good memories and how we can like bring those through. Because it was a good session today. It's the first session that I haven't cried. I did cry. I cried with laughter because we just had like this funny joke that came from a misunderstanding. She misheard me and thought that I said I couldn't relax in my suit. Can you imagine? I've been coming to therapy all this time, trying to figure out what's wrong, and the whole thing was that I was wearing this like pinstriped grey suit, sat on the flight thinking, oh, wonder why I feel so uncomfortable. But that was So funny. But yeah, interested to see what we'll go through in the next session. At some point I would love to get back to just being like excited about going away and sitting on the fly. It's kind of like a moment to have to yourself where you can be productive if you want to, or you can just sit and relax. You can't really do anything else. And maybe like I can get to the point where I'm sat on the flight and I'm kind of like enjoying looking out the window, and I know that it's going to be an amazing place to visit, an amazing holiday. Like I remember being on previous flights where I didn't have this phobia, and I remember on a flight where I felt like it went too quickly and I was quite enjoying just sitting there relaxing, and I was like, could have been on this flight for another hour. And I kind of can feel myself like getting close to that previous like version of myself, which is nice. Until then, bye. Okay, so I just had my last hypnotherapy session because we're going to be flying to Vietnam next week. We just purely talked about flying. I did cry because I felt like I was worried. It's worry coming through. In the session we did the whole understanding what my future thoughts about what the next flight will be. Worst case scenario, which is me just being super anxious about like what could happen. What we did today was go over that future scenario, wipe the timeline again, and then go over like best case scenario. And I do feel miles better, but I just feel like a little bit exhausted by it all, to be honest. I'm obviously going to get on the fly and do what I need to do. It's a fear of the fear itself. It's not actually, there's not any threat, there's not any danger. So what I feel is a feeling, it's not a fact. And it's really hard to get my head around that. And there's another exercise that I should use apart from like acknowledging the fear rather than pushing it down, because that doesn't help me. That makes me feel like I'm a little bit of a fraud. What it does by saying hello to it, acknowledging it, is use your thinking brain. And by using your thinking brain, you're thinking properly rather than being led by emotion. Knowing the facts that it is safe to fly. Any uncomfortable noises is literally just what the plane needs to do in order for it to be up in the sky. I think I lose my thinking brain when I'm scared. It goes somewhere else entirely. There's exercises that she's given me that should help me kind of put myself back into a rational mood. But I really, really would like this next trip to go well, and I'm going to try and like document how I'm feeling just before, because this is like such a long flight. It's 7 and then 6 hours. We do have a layover. I just really, really hope that I feel like grounded, I feel confident, I don't go off into this extreme fear. And I think I know deep down that I won't, but again, it's that fear of a feeling. So the next time you see me, I'll be getting ready to fly, or if I can't do that, then it'll be after the flight, and I'll explain how I felt, how it went, and we'll see if all of this hypnotherapy and cognitive therapy has helped in the end. Wish me luck.
Bitch, she died.
After this last session, I was going to be on my way to Vietnam, and I did it. I managed it. I didn't freeze up like I did before and go into this like introverted nightmare inside my own head. I had one small blunder, a very short internal flight. Suddenly all this news media blew up that there was like extreme turbulence on a flight and this elderly gentleman died. And I was like, thank you so much, Instagram, for showering me with all this information, breaking news, people have died, extreme turbulence, it's only going to get worse. But I managed it, so that was a really good test for me. And when we did return home from the trip, of which was like the most amazing trip I've probably ever been on, I probably had one of the worst flights of my life. There was just so much turbulence. It was awful, and I had a child kicking my chair the whole time, someone elbowing me. And then the next flight was British Airways, and that was probably one of the best flights of my life because we got upgraded. I felt like the staff were extremely accommodating when I got on board, and I was able to sit on that flight and watch films, and I actually thought for a second, I'm kind of enjoying this. And with that really bad flight, it was that feeling of accomplishment, like, oh, nothing really happened. It was very uncomfortable, but I survived. Since then, I've taken maybe 3 flights now, and I've not had that original fear reaction, which is literally all I could have ever wanted. So it's me from the future. It's actually been June, July, August, September, October, November, December. It's been 8 months since I filmed the last segment of that video, and I can confirm that I no longer have a phobia of flying. It just took me ages to get this video out because I also knew that editing it would be rough. But actually it's been quite nice because I've been able to experience the original fear, and it's very obvious to me that I don't have that anymore, and that's quite uplifting because we now have a trip planned for Japan and it's the same long haul flight, and right now I'm really looking forward to it. I'm actually looking forward to the flight this time because we've booked business economy, but that's how it should be. So yeah, I just wanted to speak to you from the future again, wiser and older, and just reconfirm that doing hypnotherapy specifically was probably the best decision of last year for me, because no one wants to have things holding them back. So yeah, I need to finish editing this video. Everything is gonna be okay.